Hello, everybody, and welcome. That's the dulcet tones. You know what time of week it is when that comes on? Bringing the passion from every town. Let the world be filled with love tonight. That's right, we're back. And so is the Brasileirão. Finally, George, we have some games to talk about. We're back again. We don't know what match day it is, but I'm your host, James, and I'm here as always with my co-host, George. And as the music says, welcome to Talking Brazil Ball. Yeah, so how are you doing today, George? We're finally back. Oh, you like this bit, don't you?
Well, I think everybody does, James.
Yeah, that's it. Fantastic. Yeah, welcome everybody. Welcome back to Talking Brazil Ball. I'm here, like I say, with George again. How are you doing today, George? What's going on?
Yeah, well, that's same as always, James. Really, just not a great deal. Another week passes, and like you said, Brasileirão's back, Serie A's back. Seems a little while. I think, like you said, we're a little bit out of practice, maybe, possibly, but we're back again. And how are you doing? You all right?
Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, I've been away over the weekend actually, so we may well be showing that we're out of a little bit of practice because I haven't been able to catch up as much as I'd have liked on the action at the weekend. But we do have a jam-packed show for everybody. As George says, the Brasileirão is back, and I can't remember when the enforced break came in, but it was a few weeks ago now. I mean, we did 2 shows without any action. I think it must have been about 3 weeks or so that it was cancelled for.
I can tell you, James, I think the last game was on the 14th of May.
Right, so yeah, about 3 weeks or so.
Something like that, yeah. 2.5 weeks, maybe. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, finally, it was, like you said, I was a bit pessimistic about it coming back at all. Obviously, it's great to see it back, and from here on in for a few weeks, like we were just discussing, it's a real packed schedule for the teams. I honestly, as well as the sort of the continental competitions, I really don't know how on earth they're going to get through it with the squads and everything intact, because it's absolutely jam packed. But I'm sure we'll get onto that as later on in the show.
Yeah, we will. Absolutely. It does mean that there are a lot of games to cover, so we're going to have to work out the best way to cover them. But what we want to do is always bring, a flavour of the most recent game week and where things are currently standing. So, like we'd like to do, George, like you say, we haven't had a chance to do it this last couple of weeks, but there was a full round of fixtures, fantastically.
Yeah.
So do you want to just run through the results of the games of, I think it was from Saturday, wasn't it? There was a lot on Saturday, a few on Sunday. Do you want to just run through the results and then we'll look at the games of the week?
Absolutely. There was 4 on Saturday, James. The bulk of them are on Sunday. 6. Yeah. As many as 6 are on Sundays. So yeah, as always, it would be a pleasure of mine. I'll get the tune on and we'll get straight into it.
Oh yeah. Oh, wrong tune. Oh yeah.
Here we go. Then we're on the right track with that tune. Then James, it is. So yeah, like James said, the game started again on Saturday the 1st of June, into a new month, of course. It kicked off with Grêmio 0, RB Bragantino 2. Also on Saturday, Vitória 0, Atletico Go 2. Big win for them. Cuiabá 0, Inter 1. Fluminense 1, Juventude 1. Into Sunday, then Corinthians 0, Botafogo 1. Galo 1, Bahia 1. Criciúma 1, Palmeiras 2. Vasco da Gama 1, Flamengo 6. Fortaleza 1, Atletico Paranaense 0. And to finish off the weekend, James, Sao Paulo 2, Cruzeiro 0.
Yeah, some good results for some. A huge win for Flamengo, which we're going to cover in a bit more detail a little bit later on. But if anybody can remember back to what we did choose for the games of the week, George, you went with Galo. No, sorry, yeah, Galo and Bahia, wasn't it? Your game of the week.
Yeah, it's behind me there, James.
Is it?
Galo, Bahia. It ended one apiece. Do you want me to go first with mine, or are you happy to take the lead on this one? I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can go because I think yours was a bit more of a top of the table clash kind of. I think there was a little bit maybe more interested in your one. So I picked Grêmio against Red Bull Bragantino, and that was largely because it was Grêmio's first game back, obviously, for even longer than the other teams. They were one of the teams heavily impacted by the flooding in Rio Grande do Sul, which is the reason why the games were cancelled in the first place. And unfortunately, the stadium is not quite ready for games to be played, even though they've given the go ahead for everybody to play again, and Grêmio, of course, were seemingly on board with that. But they weren't able to play in the home stadium, so they did instead move to Curitiba to play at the Couto Pereira Stadium in Curitiba, which isn't too far, I don't think, from Porto Alegre. I think it's a bit slightly north from what I remember on the map. It could be south. It's either south or north. I think it's slightly north from Porto Alegre.
Could it be east, perhaps,
No,
James?
definitely not, George. Either way, they were obviously not at home, and that's going to be the case for a little while, I believe, for Gremio. And I think they must have just been pleased to be back out there in kind of domestic competition. They have been playing continentally, and the reason I mention this is because it did have quite a big impact on this game. So Gremio against Red Bull Bragantino. Bragantino hadn't been in brilliant form really heading into the game. But Gremio decided, or Renato Gaucho, the manager, decided to put out a slightly weakened team for this game. And the reason for that was that they actually had a huge game in the Copa Libertadores group stage against a Chilean side, Huachipato, in the Libertadores group stage. So if they'd have drawn or lost that, then I believe they would have been out of the Libertadores. So Renato Gaucho went with the slightly weakened team at the weekend, and then went slightly more full strength on Wednesday morning, which was this morning, and thankfully it did pay off for them. They did get the win, a 1-0 win in Chile, which was an impressive result, really, given this result on the preceding it. Diego Costa got an early goal and they won, and that puts them through in the Libertadores, so they're into the knockout stages. So that kind of game did have a bearing on this game. And obviously, it meant that they weren't full strength, and it meant that a Red Bull could kind of take advantage of that. From what I could tell, it didn't really look like much of a contest, really. The first one was a nice goal, Ramirez, and then it was a penalty, I think, in the second half. So it wasn't. It was kind of a routine, run of the mill kind of 2-0 win, really. And that kind of. I think Gremio will take that and just kind of move on. They got what they wanted from the kind of the midweek fixture. But it doesn't leave them in a great position, to be honest, in Serie A. It means that they are 12th. They have only played 5 games. I think some of the others have already played 7 or possibly 8. I don't think anybody's played
7.
8.
Seven's the most that.
Yeah.
7's the most that anybody has played. 4's the least. That's some.
Is that Cuiabá?
Krituma have only played 4 games. So
yeah. Well, Gremio have only played 5 as well, and they don't want to. I mean, there's nothing they can do about it. It's obviously not their fault, and they've had issues to contend with. But they don't want to be losing too many games, getting too far behind, because before you know it, you're playing catch up with a load of games in hand, and other teams have got points on the board, and you're starting to struggle to get a foot in the table. So, I think from this point of view, I don't think they'll be too downhearted about the defeat. For RBB, they're up to 6th. I think they're on 12 points. They've had a kind of a pretty solid start to the season, and they'll obviously be pleased. It was probably a good time to play Gremio, really, from their point of view. But yeah, Gremio, I think they had all eyes on midweek, and that really affected the game this time.
Yeah, well, it sounds like it, James, and like you said, a massive win for them in Chile this morning, like you said, as of recording. Big result gets them through in the Libertadores. Like you said, they probably put more more into that than they did the weekend game. I think we both predicted them to win quite handsomely, but I think we had in mind maybe the want to put on a show for the fans coming back in. But obviously they had other ideas, and like you said, I think they're just probably happy just to get back out on the grass, aren't they? Really, and
well, I think it was I did expect that actually. I did think they might. I mean, you're taking out the emotion. It can be emotional occasion, but to be quite honest, it didn't look. I didn't manage to get the attendance figure, but it looked really quite empty at the Couto Pereira Stadium, which is understandable. It is, although it isn't immensely far away. It's still, Brazil's a big country, and I don't know what the kind of public transport is like for them to get up there. So yeah, you can't blame them for not packing out the stadium there, but it did look a little bit empty, a bit flat, and you do worry really with Grêmio if it goes on for a long time that they do have to play, obviously not in their home stadium. We saw how it affected Palmeiras earlier on in the season, and you just worry sometimes that a few bad results on the spin and they might start to be looking downwards rather than upwards. But I think they're at that point now where already it does look as though the Copa Libertadores might be the one for them to focus on this year, and just kind of get through the season. Don't let anything kind of drastic happen. Keep on course and just kind of keep it steady, really, because it feels already as though the Flamengo are already 8 points ahead of them. I know they've got a couple of games in hand, but it doesn't feel as though they're going to really pull that back with those games in hand. So I don't know what your feeling is on Grêmio, George, but I'm not particularly impressed with them at this early stage of the season. I think I backed them to do all right. I like Renato Gaucho as a manager, but it does feel like they are, going to the situation which is out of their control feels like it might affect them throughout the season, really.
Yeah, I think you're right, James. I mean, I did a full table at the start of the season. I have them down in 10th position, so it's probably about right, really. They, obviously I didn't know what the weather conditions were going to obviously cause a lot of trouble for them, but yeah, I had them down in mid-table, so I have to, kind of agree. I think they'll probably put a lot of it into the Libertadores. I mean, and sort of just like I said, don't let them sort of selves get sucked into relegation sort of situations. Just let them tick along. All right, we're 11th, 12th or whatever. It's fine. Just as long as they can get the Libertadores done, because hopefully the situation there has sorted itself out now and is under control. They don't want that to obviously worsen again, and them and them have another massive break. I mean, just incidentally, James, you did mention the capacity. I have the capacity here actually of that game. I don't know if you've got the capacity of the stadium itself.
It's not a small stadium, I don't think. To be honest, it's not. I don't think it doesn't look like an enormous stadium, but it's not tiny. It's it's about 40,000, slightly over.
Well, there's there's no surprise. It looked a bit empty then because the attendance was 7,439. So yeah, there was hardly anybody there in capacity to how large the stadium is, really. So, but like you said, you can understand it. People have absolutely far more important things, really, to occupy themselves with than a football game at this time in that area of the world. So, like I said, they'll move on. They've got the win. They got the win this morning, and that's probably what they wanted, like you said, from the game.
Yeah, well, obviously they'd have liked to win them both, but if I think if you'd have asked them if you can only win one, I think it would have been that Libertadores game. So that was Grêmio back in action. Nice to see them back in action anyway, and regardless of the result, and hopefully they can start to roll on a little bit now and put together a few games. So yeah, George, your game was I think slightly more. It looked like there was a bit more riding on it. So you were covering Galo and Bahia this weekend, were you? So what can you tell us about what happened over in Belo Horizonte?
Well, James, it was quite a I think it was quite a sort of a back and forth game. I think it was quite even, really, in the end. Well, actually, I mean, Galo, they had a lot more possession and a lot more of the ball than Bahia did. but it's what they did with it, really. 21 shots in all James Galo had on Sunday. Only 4 on target in the whole game, opposed to Bahia. They had 9 shots and 2 on target. So they only had 36% possession of the ball, Bahia. And yet they got a draw. I mean, the manager was so happy with it at the end of the Seni. He was delighted with the point. And I think, you've got to say Galo at the other side of the table were probably a bit disappointed, really. They didn't end up winning it. Although, Bahia sit in second place in the table. So the no pushovers, like we know, we spoke about them already on the pod, James. We know that the looking good, that Seni's got them playing good football. And, it took a while to get going in this game. Like I said, Galo didn't seem to have the shooting boots on, unfortunately, from my perspective, until Hulk steps up and absolutely slammed that free kick in the top corner. I think he'd just had enough of it, missing a load of chances, just get that one in, and that's how you do it. He absolutely blasted that ball into the net. I don't know if you've seen that one, James. I'm sure you have.
Yeah, it was kind of like a whipped. It was kind of like a whipped, left-footed strike. Wasn't it kind of a weird one, because it's kind of a left. It's an angle for a right footer, from what I remember. It's like kind of on the. If you're looking at the penalty area, it's on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
But Hulk steps up and kind of whips it all the way across the goal, and into the top corner. Yeah, it's. It's classic Hulk, really, isn't it? It's the kind of goal that we've seen him score throughout his career, really, and he hasn't really turned up too big this season so far. But if he can do that, then he's a difference maker, really. So yeah, lovely goal.
Yeah, I mean he wasn't happy at all either at the end of the game, James. Yeah. He was bemoaning the fact that they didn't get a penalty, and it was a penalty. If you look at it, it's from one of the lads who won an award in previous weeks for us. It's Biel, yeah, it came from him. Sort of 93rd minute of the game, I think it was. There's a ball came over the top. It hit his arm. I don't know if it hit his hand or it definitely hit his arm. And I think in today's game, it was probably a penalty. And Hulk wasn't happy at all after the game. The referee didn't even go to the monitor. And he said, what you can't do is escape responsibility. Unfortunately, he says VAR is in charge of Brazilian football. So he wasn't happy at all. And it probably was a penalty, and that would have given the opportunity probably for him as well to have a chance of winning the game, because I think he would have probably taken the penalty himself. He's a captain, isn't he? At Galo, I think he would have probably stepped up and probably scored, to be fair. But they didn't hammer that home. They didn't hammer home the advantage, the amount of possession they had on the ball, James. And ultimately, only 8 minutes after Hull could put them ahead, Galo, Bahia came back and got the equaliser. And again, Rogério Ceni has to be praised for his substitutions here, James. Again, we've spoken about it already in previous pods that he seems to just get it right, and he did again. Both of his substitutes combined. Well, 2 of his, in the end, 5 subs combined for the equalising goal, and it's former Hull City man. Oscar Estupinian, who's, I say former, he's still, I think, he's still a Hull City player. He's on loan at Bahia for the season, goes back to Hull mid-season, of course, in January of next year. So he'll be at Hull, well, if they want him, come the end, come the start of the new year. He had a really good season. Last season, the season before last, he got 13 goals, James, in the 22-23 season. He had a really good season. I don't know why they sent him out on loan, but obviously he wasn't fancied by Rosinier, who was in there. He's not anymore, is he? But he made the difference in this game. It's a chip ball forward. He's onside Estupinian gets the ball, passes it back to Ademir Santos, and he just curls a lovely strike into the top corner. I don't want to touch it too much. It might give it away, this, but we're going to speak about it later on in the show, aren't we, James? So I don't want to speak about it too much, but in this segment. But it must have felt sweet to him, James, because you know who he used to play for, don't you?
I do, yeah. He's a former Galo man, so
yeah, he's a former rooster.
Back on his, he's a former. What was it, Fraga?
Yeah, I think that was it. Yeah, but that means chicken, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's the derogatory term. Yeah, no, he's back on his old stomping ground, and he'll be absolutely delighted with the way he caught that one. Yeah, super goal. Like you say, we'll touch on it, so we will segue into that. Is there anything you'd just like to add on the Galo game? I know Galo, although they're not at the best, they are still unbeaten in 6 games. So they're one of only 2 teams yet to be beaten. So they're not as high in the table as they probably would like to be, but they do have solidity. They're not easy to get past, basically.
Yeah, no, I think they will be disappointed, James, in the way that they've sort of dropped off a little bit. I think Melito will be happy that they're still unbeaten in the league, but the sort of form has dropped off a little bit. Only 1 win in the last 4 in all competitions now. A couple of defeats, 1 in the Libertadores, 1 in the Brazilian Cup, although I think they won the overall tie against Sport Recife, and then the win against Caracas, the Venezuelan side, last week, I think it was, in the Copa. So, yeah, they need to get back on and winning ways, but Fortaleza just on and off point. They're the second team, the only other unbeaten side in Serie A so far. They both sit 10th and 11th, but I think Fortaleza, they've only lost 1 game in something like 16 in all competitions. So, Vojvoda's got them playing, quietly, going about the business. They're only 4 points off the top of the league. And unbeaten in 6 games. So they're maybe a bit of a creeper to think about later on in the season. But as for Atletico MG Galo, they'll be a bit disappointed with that. But Bahia, no pushovers, into second place, and looking like maybe if they can keep this run going for another kind of few games, you've got to say, hey, maybe they're in for sort of a championship charge. You never know, but I'm a big fan of Rogerio Ceni, James, who's seems to have gotten playing really well. And like I said, Ademir Santos, he was a substitute as well. Came on, I think, 12 minutes, and then he scored that lovely goal. So
it does seem to be good with his subs. We seem to have mentioned it at least 2 or 3 times already that the subs have made a real impact, and I tipped them to go down, actually. And you never know at this early stage, things can be a little bit kind of deceiving, but it's around this point of the season where you start to say, well, they're not fluking it anymore. They are a good team. They've had some good results against good sides, so they are up there, and they look like they might be. I don't think they'll sustain it. I really don't. But I think they'll be maybe top half, pushing for the continental places. But anyway, we can talk more about Bahia, because as you kind of gave it away there. But yeah, we didn't have the graphic earlier, did we? Usually the fans of the Instagram will be watching and seeing the graphics, so they know what's coming before we talk about it. But we have kept it under wraps up until now. But yes, the goal of the round, which we'll do, we usually do the play of the round first, but let's carry on the Bahia train. So the goal of the round, Ademir Santos, and to be honest, there was quite a bit of competition this time. I think the last couple of rounds we were scrabbling about a bit for goals, but I mean there were some really good goals in this round. We already mentioned Hulk scored an absolute belting free kick, and Vegetti scored a really nice goal for Vasco. A nice volley before they got pumped by Flamengo. They went ahead in that game and then got smashed. But Vegetti has already got a few this season, and that was another nice one. David Luiz got a nice volley from a corner in that game as well. Diarasqueta, who I know we're going to touch on as well, got a really nice. He set up a really nice assist, basically, didn't he? A nice little run and a squared finish. There was another couple in there as well, to be honest. Lucas Moura got a kind of a long range. I don't know if any caught your eye before we just go into Santos's in more detail.
It's pretty much all the ones you spoke about there, James. I think I was almost ready to give it to. I know we're going to speak about him later, but you better say his name because I just can't get my head around it.
No, go on. He's got your first name, hasn't he?
Is he?
Well, he's Georgian.
Oh, Jorijan de Aristeta.
I think that's fine, yeah. Georgian de Aristeta. I would say Aristeta, but I don't know.
Aristeta. I mean, he's obviously Uruguayan, isn't he? Be in Bielsa's side for the Copa America, won't he? But he got a really it was a really nice run, like you said, a little bit of skill, and then he passed it off to Henrique, and he sort of curled one into the top corner, and that was one that was on my mind a little bit. But then I thought Ademir Santos was the best of the bunch, but also I thought Botafogo's goal on Sunday, was it Saturday they played Sunday against Corinthians. Santos, I kind of like that. It was like a cross low ball from the left, and he just kind of opened his body up and put it in first time into the bottom corner. I did like that goal, but I think there's too many kind of belters to kind of go about that. In the end, we kind of went for Ademir Santos, not Junior Santos of Botafogo. But there was plenty. I mean, even in that Flamengo game alone, there was 3 or 4 good goals. Really, I mean, Everton got a nice goal to kick them on. Flamengo to equalise. It was a nice again. Diallo said, making a little header of an assist, and he just finished it in the bottom corner. There were too many to kind of mention, really, like you said, James. In the end, it was a feast of goals, wasn't it? Really.
Yeah, it was, and Ademir Santos got it, and I think he got it purely because. I mean, it was probably the best goal if you put them all side to side. Some of the other ones were a bit bobbly. Maybe the keeper should have done better, but there was nothing the goalie could have done about this one. It was kind of from the right-hand side of the area for anybody who hasn't seen it, and he picks it up, and he is some distance out, and he just sets it out with his left foot, kind of Mohamed Salah-esque, Iron Robben-esque, but, a little bit further out, really, from what we used to see in those players do, and he just bends it, gets a nice lift on it. The goalie dives, but it's well past him into the top corner, and also we'd like to take into account the importance of the goal, and that was a big goal for Bahia. Got them back in the game, and ultimately got them a point away at Galo. So yeah, like you said, a big goal for Ademir Santos. He's not really been starting. I think he's only started 2 actually so far for Bahia. He hasn't been one of the kind of first names on the team sheet, but he does tend to come on if he isn't starting. So yeah, the big moment for him. I don't know what his celebration was like, George. I know you've got a thing about players celebrating against real teams. I think he did celebrate, didn't he? I think the whole team came around, and it was that good a goal that everybody else on the team, even if he didn't want to celebrate, everybody else wants to celebrate it with him.
Well, yeah, exactly. I think he did celebrate, but then, like you said, former team. He was a former rooster, but some players do like to celebrate ones, but you can't score one of them and just run back to the halfway line, can you? And it was a important goal for them, like you said, got them back on level terms. He had also, like I said previously, he'd only come on like 12 minutes before he went and did that. I don't know, I don't think he didn't have too many touches of the ball, and I can't remember how many touches he took to set himself. It might have been 1 touch to set it and bang shot, but he only had 10 touches of the ball, and that's passed, in the 20 minutes after he scored as well. So he didn't touch the ball too many times, but he certainly had a big impact in the game and the result in the end. It's a massive point for Bahia, like I said, and shows that they can mix it with the good teams in this league. And like you said, maybe they're not fluking it anymore, but that was a that was certainly one to start, to get people to stand up and say, hey, what a goal, who's this guy, scoring these sort of goals. But 29-year-old is Santos, and he hasn't played outside of Brazil, so that who knows? Maybe that might kick him on to some kind of European venture. Who knows? These things do happen.
You can't rule anything out, but I wouldn't have thought so. But anyway, well done to Ademir Santos. He's the goal of the round winner, and a good one this time. So moving on, we'll go on to the player of the round, because we have already kind of spoken about him and why he may have been the player of the round there. So that was Georgian Diarra again. So I think he is a player who is probably slightly, not to disrespect the other teams and the competition, but he's one who you look at and you think he could play at maybe a slightly higher level. He was impressive in the World Cup in 2022, got a few goals there. I think he was at Cruzeiro before, and he's been around Brazil for a while. Like you said, he is Uruguayan. He's 30 now, so another one who you'd probably assume that he's moved to Europe. He might get somewhere that's a smaller side, but he isn't going to move to one of the top teams in the top league anymore. But he was unplayable in this game, wasn't he?
Oh, he was, James. Like you said, he might have been a little bit over the hill for a transfer to a top European side at 30. I don't think a lot of them would really take a chance on him, but he's in the eye of a lot of teams. Obviously, Uruguayan, in that team that are doing so well at the moment, the Copa America, he'll be in there. He'll be doing his business. But he was unplayable in this game. 2 assists and a goal. The assists, like I said, particularly that second one for Henrique, which was, I think it was the 5th goal of the game, was fantastic. He ran basically from his own half, a little bit of trickery in there as well, and and he popped it off to Henrique on the left hand side, who curled the ball into the top corner. The other assist was nice, little bit of quick thinking for him to set up Everton for the equaliser. He then scored the 4th goal, which was a nice little sort of chipped finish, one-on-one with the goalkeeper again. So he's showing his skill there. I think I did have a little bit of a sort of a toss-up in my mind between him and Everton as well, because Everton had a really, really good game in this game as well, James. It was a derby as well, let's not forget. And obviously, like you said, we didn't mention, you mentioned Vigetti, which was a fabulous little turn and finish, wasn't it, to get them going on the 9th minute. But Everton, he got the same as Aracete. He got 2 goals, 2 assists and a goal as well. And I did nearly give it to him, but he got them on his way with a nice finish. But the other 2 were pretty routine kind of cross balls in. One was a corner, like you said, from David Luiz's sort of nice volleyed finish, and the other was a sort of cross from the right hand side for Pedro to kind of like chest the ball in to get them to 2-1. But in the end of the day, he did have the hand in all 3 goals that did turn the game around for Flamengo in the end, and got them to a comfortable position where they could just go and rip through Vasco. Basically, wasn't a good start for Alvaro Pacheco, who I think it was his first game in charge of Vasco. Obviously started incredibly well. You probably couldn't believe how well they started, and then they just fell apart. But it's no disgrace when players like Diarra are on form, and Pedro's, and Everton's scoring goals, and Pedro got a goal and assist. There was no goal for De La Cruz this time, or assist, but when you got players like that, and even David Luiz getting in on the party, you're going to struggle, aren't you, to get anything going? And they did eventually, and they got absolutely annihilated in the end.
Yeah, Luiz seemed to really enjoy that goal. He was giving it lot in his celebration. I mean, like you said, it is a derby game, and it was away for Flamengo. It was at Vasco, so really hurt. I mean, it'll hurt them. That it's a really disappointing result for them. And like you said, the new manager Pacheco, we know that in Brazil you don't get a lot of time to stamp your kind of mark on a team, and to come in and lose 6-1 in a derby on the first game, I wouldn't even put it past them to sack him right there on the spot and get a new manager. That's the way that they seem to do things. So I think one thing to mention on Vasco, obviously they were outclassed, and I think Di Araceta was the best player in that game. I mean, Everton got the kind of the goal contributions as well, but Di Araceta, just the quality of him. That goal was a really nicely taken finish. If you watch it, not a lot of players will have the presence of mind to get through the way he did and then just lift it over the keeper. So, but yeah, for Vasco, obviously I don't think we've had a chance to speak about it, but they do look as though they are bringing back Felipe Coutinho to the club. I don't think it's gone through yet. I think it potentially has hit a slight snag, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But it hasn't as yet been confirmed anyway. I mean, he obviously played no part in this game. But that'll be a great signing for them. Obviously, a player who I have watched a lot over the years, and a player who is capable of absolute magic, really. And he's obviously a Vasco Youth Academy product, so it's a hugely emotional move for him. And just him together with Dimitri Payet has some real potential, I think, for them. But it also has potential to go the other way. We do see these moves. Look at James Rodriguez, for example, who comes as a fading star and can't quite, get anything going. And Coutinho's that kind of player where you wouldn't put it past him just to drop off the radar completely. It doesn't work out, and he retires or goes back to Qatar or something like that. But really exciting, and I'm pleased that we're covering it and we're able to see Coutinho, because he's a heck of a player on his day.
Oh, he's fabulous on his day, James, and obviously didn't work in the Premier League, but it did for a time. You saw his quality, didn't you, in the early stages of his move to Aston Villa. So yeah, I mean, he might just lift them. With the new manager, yeah, it's a horrible start. It's a worst possible start for him. But with Coutinho potentially coming in, it lift the fan base. I mean, there were over 62,000 people there, James, on Sunday. They must have been incredibly disappointed, and I saw on sort of Twitter Flamengo fans really rubbing it into them. But you know what I mean, that's what's going to happen. You win a derby game 6-1, you're going to enjoy it, aren't you? I'm sure a lot of people at work the next day or whatever would have been hiding in the various different places of work if they've got a Flamengo fan they work with. But yeah, very, very disappointing. But I'm sure it might even give the manager a lift if Coutinho was to come in after this horrendous game. Of course, it did turn a little bit on half time as well, James. They did have a player sent off, Yao Victor. I think the referee did go to VAR. He did initially give him a yellow card. He went to VAR and gave him a red card right on half time.
Yeah.
But they were already 3-1 down at that stage. But going down to 10 men, in the, disappointment of just, getting ripped apart 3-1, they probably just down tools a little bit and ended up 6-1. I did, as well, just, I was going to, potentially, I was thinking about giving he was never going to reach past the man that got the award eventually, but I did think about, James, giving the Player of the Round award to Gustavo Gomez of Palmeiras, who got a goal and assist, a very late assist for Lazaro in a 2-1 win at Criciúma. He scored a penalty. He's a centre back. And then he also assisted the winning goal in the 92nd minute for Lazaro. But I just thought, no, Di Araceta, he's too, you couldn't look past him, basically. And I could have gone with a full sweep of Flamengo, to be honest with you, James, in this match week. I could have done, because they were that good. They absolutely ripped them apart.
Yeah, there was a nice header, that Lazaro, the Palmeiras chap with the assist. It was a nice headed on. Yeah, Ramoa as well, I think, for Atletico Gio, got a couple of assists for them.
Yeah,
he was worth mentioning. But like you say, he was always going to go to the man who orchestrated that big win for Flamengo, Georgian Diarasqueta. So he's our player of the round, and well done to him. He'll be gearing up for the Copa America, likely as we speak with Mr. Bielsa. So again, for the young player of the round, I mean, there's not a whole lot to say really. Again, I mean, I think we tend to like to give it to different teams so we can touch on the teams and a few different ones. But sometimes, with the young player of the round, as we've mentioned, it can be a bit tricky. And we are seeing kind of young players now depart Brazil. Looks like Luis Guilherme is going to West Ham. Esteval Willian's obviously going to Chelsea. Wesley Gassava, there's rumours about him as well in West Ham. So they are depleting us of a lot of talent. But there's one that we haven't spoke about before, or we might have touched on in the preview shows, I'm not sure. But it's another Flamengo player, so it's a young right back, another Wesley, actually. So Wesley Gassava is the guy who's taking all the kind of the headlines. But this chap is another Wesley. And do you want to just explain why we've given it to him, George?
Yeah, well, like you said, James, 20-year-old, this Wesley, this particular Wesley from Flamengo. We gave him it basically, and again, without being able to watch a lot of the games in full. We're going off the highlights and who got goal contributions, really. And he got a goal contribution. He got an assist for Barbosa. It was the last goal of the 6-1 win against Vasco. And yeah, it was basically because of that, really. Like you said, a lot of them are leaving now, the talents, and it's a shame for us, but obviously it's interesting for the likes of Premier League sides of West Ham and Chelsea to get a look and see how these guys do in the Premier League. But yeah, we're kind of scraping around. This one is always the hardest one to pick, isn't it? Because you're kind of hoping that a young player will do something in the games, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes they do. And obviously Wesley came up with an assist in this one. So, naturally, we gave it to him.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's. I mean, you always say that, but if somebody we've had a few where it's been really easy to pick. Wesley, Wesley had one where he was unplayable. Loran, I think, for Flamengo as well. So, you say that, but it's only difficult when it's when there's nobody, because player of the round is obviously could be anybody. So it does make it slightly tricky, but it also allows us to highlight players who maybe are off the radar a little bit. And Wesley possibly is one of those. He's come through at Flamengo. He's, like you said, only 20, and he's already played a decent amount for the first team. He doesn't seem to be a particularly important player or a key player, but if he keeps getting on and getting those contributions, then maybe he'll be able to break in and make a bit of a name for himself. But just on Flamengo more generally, so Wesley is the young player of the round. So, congratulations to him. But Flamengo are looking good now, George. I know you were tipping them to win the title at the start of the season. They're making quite good on that already. They've actually won the last 5, I think, in all competitions now. Yeah, 5 in a row. They've only conceded 1 goal in that time, and they've scored 16. So they're really purring now under Tite.
Yeah, look, I mean, I've predicted them to win the league, James. I just don't see anybody topping them. I really don't. Like I said, they're looking like they're getting going. Absolutely hammered them. Vasco on Sunday. They've got nearly a week to prepare, which I think is quite rare in Brazilian football. They've got quite a few days to prepare for a home match at Grêmio. Is the next one on Friday the 14th. So they've got a week and a bit to prepare for that one. So yeah, they're going really, really well. And there's young players like we spoke about Loran, didn't we, recently as well? He didn't even get on the pitch on Sunday. And there's other ones, Hugo, Victor Hugo. There's Everton Araujo. So yeah, there's young players that waiting to have a look at who couldn't get even on the pitch, and they've just got too much quality, And David Luiz comes in and contributes, scores a goal, and all over the pitch they've got quality that I think is like you touched on with Arisheta. It's too good for this league, really. Like I said, with respect to it, but yeah, a lot of these players are too good now for this division.
Yeah, they are. They're not clear at the top. They are level on points with Bahia, so they're keeping with them. And there's then a group of teams who are quite close by.
Yeah.
So as we touched on at the top of the show, there's a bit of a mess now in terms of fixtures. So I know we usually run through the fixtures, but should we run through just because what we're going to do is before we do the next show, there will be 6 games, 7 games,
five games.
Well, there's going to be one game this evening on Wednesday.
Oh yes, sorry,
early Thursday morning, which we're not going to cover in detail. There's one on Sunday, isn't there? Then there's some midweek games. So we're looking at Tuesday the 11th and Wednesday the 12th of June. So a week today, and then we're kind of back into there's a run. Then there's a full round of fixtures on the Friday and Saturday, or catch-up fixtures. And then the next time we're actually, I think, back to normal is the 16th of June. So next weekend is a bit of a mess. And then the weekend after that is kind of back to normal. So I don't know if you want to run through quickly those games. I don't think it's worth it, to be honest, George. And I think we'll just look at the games of the round. We'll run through the table initially, I think, and just have a look at what things lie. And we might pick out 1 or 2 bits from the table. And then I think we'll just pull out the games of the round that we're going to cover for next week. And then we'll have a look forward again beyond that. So if you just want to run through the table initially, and then we'll just chat about anything that jumps out from the table.
Yeah, of course. Well, yeah, no worries, James. I mean, just like you said, there is a couple of games tonight as of recording. There's one late at night, which is Juventud against Atletico Galo. And then at midnight English time over here is Cuiabá against Vitória, which is massive. Something's surely got to give between those two sides. Only a point between the two of them, so that's huge. But like you said, we'll cover the table first.
Well, just before you do that, I mean, there's only a point between the two there, Cuiabá, Vitória, but Cuiabá are on 0 and Vitória are on 1. So it's a real kind of, losers game. And just on Cuiabá, I mean, they have got an absolutely hellish schedule. They've got a game tonight, so 12 midnight at home to Vitória. They then travel to Criciúma on the Sunday evening, so 8 p.m. And then they're at it again on Thursday evening against Cruzeiro away. So they've actually, and then they're playing again on Sunday. So within the space of, 11 days, I think they've got 4 games. So that's not going to be easy on them. I think the Cuiabá manager was moaning about his squad already this season. So, it's Petit, isn't it? Petit's coming, the new manager. So, good luck to him. But that looks like a recipe for a disaster. And to me, they have to win against Vitória. But equally, Vitória have to win as well. So let's see what happens there. But anyway, we're going to run through the table.
Well, I think they're already through in the Sudamericana. But again, that's going to mess with the schedule as the season goes on as well. But it's a real sort of basement battle. It couldn't be any. You can't describe it as anything else. That so 1 point between from 11 games between them is absolutely horrendous. But the table then, James, as we move into, I'll put the music on. And so top of the table, like James mentioned, I think just before now, Flamengo on 14 points. Also on 14 points in second is Bahia. Third down to fifth all have 13 points. It goes Botafogo, then Sao Paulo, and then Atletico Paranaense. On 12 points in sixth position is RB Bragantino. Seventh on 11 points is Palmeiras. Then come 8th to 11th, all on 10 points. Internacional, Cruzeiro, Atletico MG, Galo, and then Fortaleza. In 12th on 6 points is Grêmio. Also on 6 points is Vasco da Gama in 13th position. 14th is Juventud, also on 6 points. Then come in 15th position Fluminense on 6 points as well. Both on 5 points, it's Criciúma in 16th, and then into the relegation zone, Corinthians on the both on 5 points there in 17th position, James. Then Atletico Go 18th on 4 points. Then, like you said, absolutely being cut adrift almost at the moment is Vitoria on 1 point in 19th position. And Cuiabá, who sit again every week's the same, isn't it? Bottom of the pile on 0 points. Like we said, massive game tonight.
Yeah, disappointing for them. I mean, they were a little unlucky perhaps at the weekend. They gave it a good go. They only lost 1-0 against Inter, who were obviously, like Grêmio, back in action, but away from home at Cuiabá, and they won 1-0 Inter in the end. So I just want to touch on Inter, actually, just because we were going well before the stoppage, and they are 8th at the minute, like you said, with 10 points from 5 games. But if you look up above them, everybody else has played 2 games more. And they're only 4 points off the top 2 teams. So if they do win the games in hand, they would be clear at the top. Obviously, that's easier said than done. But Inter, I think, wants to kind of to quietly keep an eye on. I think they were going well before we had a look at them in a couple of games, didn't we? And they were looking like contenders, and I think that won't stop, to be honest. I don't know if there's any team that you want to just touch on that we haven't had a look at yet, George. There were a couple there who are catching my eye.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be Sao Paulo, James. I know we speak about them quite often now, with them doing well, but it was a team that I tipped as a little bit of a surprise, if you like, and they're living up to that kind of billing, really. And another win on Sunday. It's they haven't lost since April, since sort of mid-April. That is, in all competitions, a run of 11 games now without a defeat. So, and that was to Flamengo as well. So they're really, really going well. Another win, like I said, 2-0 against Cruzeiro. Cruzeiro were down to 10 men. Lucas Moura, like you said before, he got quite a nice goal, long range finish. They did have to play quite a number of minutes with 10 men. Cruzeiro, Marlon got sent off in the 38th minute. So yeah, it was a bit of an uphill struggle from there for them. Already 1-0 down at the time, but yeah, Sao Paulo, for me, really looking solid. We've spoken about Zubeldia, haven't we, quite a bit as well. It seems to just have them going really, really well, and really, just they don't concede goals. They haven't conceded a goal for 4 games now, and I tip them, I know, to be a surprise and definitely get the Libertadores positions, but maybe even challenge at this moment for the championship.
Yeah, they could do. If they keep it up. It's been a great run of form for them. I think at the other end of the table, I think I'd just like to touch on Fluminense again. I know we have spoken about them in previous editions, but obviously they're back in action, and we haven't seen them for a bit, and it's just not going up, and just not going for them at all. They're 15th at the minute, and they drew obviously this weekend against Juventude at the Maracanã. And Juventude actually are 1 place above them, and you have to give credit to Juventude because the other teams who have come up are really struggling. Criciúma are doing okay, having only played 4, but the other 2 are right down there. And Juventude are kind of making a stick of it. They've only played 5, they've won 1, they've drawn 3, only lost 1, and obviously held Fluminense. And I know we spoke a few weeks ago about the Fluminense goalkeeper and how he perhaps can't really live up to the standards or the type of football that Fernando Diniz wants to play. And we saw that again, George, at the weekend. Fabio, 43 years old, and I just hasten to add it's time to let it go, because he just gives them this goal. He passes it straight to Jadson, who finishes it. It's a really pathetic piece of goalkeeping and symptomatic of Fluminense, who just can't seem to get anything right at the minute.
Yeah, it's horrendous, James, this bit of goalkeeping. Like you've touched on him before in the pod, and you're not a fan of him at all, I know. But what made it worse, this goal, was he kind of looked like he was going to pass to somebody else, and then he changed his mind at the last minute and tried to pass it. And Jadson just reads it and puts it in, simple as you like. And you've got to really say, Denise, maybe the next game, if you lose or you don't win, you've gone. You're now what, this will be the 8th game of the season. The next one against Botafogo on next Wednesday morning. You've got to say if you don't win that, there's real problems, and I think there's a real possibility that he could lose his job, because they should be beaten. No disrespect to Juventus, like you said, they've made a real fist of it, and they had to play the last sort of 6 and plus minutes with 10 men, but you should be beating teams like that at the Maracanã, yeah, and you should be beating teams like that, and he doesn't, and they haven't got going at all really in the league, and I think it's win or bust for him the next one.
I think the one thing that's keeping him going is probably the Libertadores form. They have won their group there. They have qualified comfortably in that, and obviously they won it last year. It might be just keeping him going a little bit, but he certainly is. There'll be conversations going on about, come on, this has to be better. So hopefully they do pull it back, because I do think he's a good coach, and I do think they've probably just had a bit of one of them where they start poorly and they just can't quite hit the straps properly. But it does need to get better, because they are only a point above the relegation zone at the minute, and Corinthians are down there, and we saw them have a bit of a pickup, but they seem to have regressed slightly again now. But anyway, it's an interesting looking table. There's a few teams grouped together. There's a few surprise packages, and we'll see how it kind of pans out once these kind of games in hand get gobbled up, which is always difficult to judge a table when there's teams with games in hand. But just looking ahead at the fixtures then, so we will pick out a couple of key of games of the week to do next week. So there'll be, like you said, those 2 games this evening. And then Sunday, we're looking at Criciúma against Cuiabá. So we're disregarding that one for the time being. There's Atletico Gio hosting Corinthians, Juventude against Vitória, which is another clash of the promoted teams. And then there's Botafogo Fluminense on Wednesday, and Red Bull Bragantino and Atletico Atletico MG as well on Wednesday morning. So if we do the poll on the Wednesday, you're going to look. Sorry, I'm going to look at Juventude Vitória, which is, like I said, a little bit of a relegation battle. And George, you're going to look at a Rio derby, I believe. Yes, you are, Rio derby.
Yeah, it's the one I just mentioned, isn't it? Botafogo against Fluminense. So, but that puts even more weight on Denise for me. If it's a derby game, the fans won't be happy, and given the precarious position in the table, they could potentially be, I think, in the relegation zone possibly come that game. Well, there's a lot of teams between them and the relegation zone. There's only Criciúma, isn't there? So potentially they could maybe be in the relegation zone come kick off on that particular game. So it's a massive game for them, and I hope for his sake they win. But you know what I mean. Botafogo aren't going to be any pushovers. They're a good side, and they're going pretty well at the moment. Potentially with a win going into first position. So. It's going to be a difficult game, but a fiery affair, with it being a derby game as well.
Yeah, that'll be a great one to look at, I think. And like you said, after you've kind of given Denise the kind of the last rites there, I think, yeah, it's only right that you kind of cover that one and have a look at what goes on. It'd be interesting to see if he does drop the goalkeeper. I don't think he will, to be honest. But after what we've seen for a few weeks, I don't feel like there's much confidence in him at the moment. But
there can't be, surely. I mean, it's incredible. Fair enough. He's going on to that age. It's it's good, but maybe like you said, maybe it's time to just hang up your gloves and just say, yeah, enough's enough. Really, he's not helping the team, because it was completely, his own fault. He had nobody else to blame but himself. It was ridiculous. I mean, these things happen, but maybe it's just happening too many times to him now.
Well, it's happening too many times, and when you're down at the bottom, not really getting going, you can't be giving away goals. You can't be giving away goals like that. But anyway, I think that concludes the show today, George. Unless you have any final closing thoughts on today's episode.
Not really, James. All that's to say is it's great to have the games back up and running, and like you said, yes, it is a bit of a messy fixture list from, for a couple of weeks maybe, but we'll try and cover it the best we can. Like you said, there'll be 7-5 games to look at next week. So we'll just, do it as we can. And we'll try and keep on top of it, at the best we can.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it. So great to be back. Great to have the footy back. And we'll catch you next week. Thanks very much for listening, everybody. Adios.
Yeah, adios, everybody. Enjoy the week.
Get that theme song going.
Absolutely. That's probably what some people have come and tuned in for.
Yeah. Well, we're making them wait for it. Thanks, everybody. See you later on.
Adios.
Talking Brazil ball, we're breaking it down. Bringing the passion from every town. Let the world be filled with love tonight. Sway to the beat, make you feel so right. Summer, summer vibes, we're dancing in the heat. Go, go, go. Can't be beat, talking Brazil ball, spreading love in every way. In the sound of paradise, we're here to stay.